The head of the Department of Foreign Affairs has labelled China's infamous list of grievances as a massive own goal. Francis Adamson warns the rising power is motivated by a volatile combination of power and insecurity.
Beijing's military might on full display, part of President Xi Jinping's push to project power on the world stage.
Few really grasp that this great power is still dogged by insecurity as much as driven by ambition.
A frank assessment on a changing China from the outgoing Foreign Affairs Secretary Francis Adamson. In a rare address from Australia's top diplomat, she's characterised Beijing's deeply defensive mindset as counterproductive.
China is undergoing a steep loss of influence in Australia and many other countries.
That view backed up by new polling by the Lowy Institute, showing only 16% of Australians trust China to act responsibly. And for the first time, more Australians now see Beijing as a security threat rather than an economic partner. That plunging support follows China's campaign of coercion and the infamous list of 14 grievances against Australia that was brazenly handed over by Chinese officials to Australian journalists.
It was a massive own goal by China. I couldn't understand why they did it. I think it's played very negatively for them.
China's negativity in part sparked by Australia's decision to go it alone, calling for an inquiry into the origins of COVID-19. Francis Adamson stands by the approach.
It always puzzles me, actually, that people keep coming back to this because the need was so obvious.
This marks the end of a chapter for Francis Adamson. After 5 years at the helm of Australia's foreign policy, she exits the role with little optimism that a thaw in relations with China is on the cards.
I think it will only be when China sees its own interests as being served by a different model that it will change.
But a change of scenery on the cards for Francis Adamson, moving to South Australia to become the governor. Trudy McIntosh, Sky News, Canberra.
Let's get some further thoughts and analysis now with Director of the Lowy Institute's Public Opinion and Foreign Policy Program, Natasha Kassam. Natasha, thanks so much for your time. This has been really quite a dramatic turnaround, hasn't it, in terms of the way we see China from economic partner now to security threat?
It's a really dramatic change. You know, it was only a couple of years ago that Australia was actually an outlier in the Western world in terms of public opinion towards China. Australians felt more positively towards China than most countries. But we've seen that really slide just in the course of 3 years. In 2018, 83% of Australians saw China as more of an economic partner rather than a security threat. Today, it is completely flipped. It's 63% say that China is more of a security threat to Australia.
However, and this is the caveat, more than half, 57%, say Australia should remain neutral in any potential conflict between the two major powers.
I think there's a few things going on there. So Australians are much more concerned about a military conflict between the United States and China over Taiwan than they were in the past. A majority now say that that poses a critical threat to Australia's interests. But as you say, the majority would prefer to stay neutral in the case of a conflict between the two. I think that actually is consistent with long-standing reluctance by the Australian public to deploy our military overseas. I think it comes in part from disillusionment with what happened in the Middle East. And so Australians today, in the main, would prefer to stay out of such a thing. Of course, as you just discussed, they know that China is also our largest trading partner. So conflict in our region could have catastrophic consequences for a lot of people, but also for Australia's economic prosperity.